up, you guys? This is Rob from Gay Guy Plays, and today on #confirmed-ish, we're going to be taking a look at the stats for the new glass frame, the weapons in the glass frame bundle, and several of the Grineer weapons that are set to be launching for PoE. Now, I do want to give you guys a little bit of a heads up. All of this information was pulled off of the DE stream that they were doing a little bit earlier, where they invited a couple streamers to join them in their kind of like, what was it, the primetime setup, and they were able to play with the glass frame. They were allowed to play with some of the weapons. So I grabbed all of these stats from there, but they are playing off of the development build. So for those of you guys who don't know, anything on the development build is still up for them to tamper with. So these stats, I mean, they seem pretty definitive, and they definitely seem to be telling a story, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to be like the finalized stats 100%. The other thing that I do want to point out is a lot of the footage that I got and a lot of the screen grabs I got, some of the numbers were a little bit hard to reach because these screens were kind of like smaller to fit in like face cams and multiple screens at the same time. So pardon me if I say something is like a 5, but it's actually an 8. I'm going to be posting up images on the screen as well, so that you can kind of take a look at them for yourself, and you can like make with them as you wish. The grammar's gone, so let's go ahead and jump into our first weapon, which is from the glass frame bundle. This one is the Astilla. So this is a glass shotgun, and interestingly enough, it's projectile based, and it's a slug shotgun. Now, I don't really know what that means because I'm not like this big crazy weapons expert. However, I do love my Euphona Prime, and I know that it does have a slug mode for its shot, and that slug mode is just a single, I'm assuming it's a single big old bullet, alright? And that's what it was kind of looking like on screen. It was a single big old bullet. The animations on this thing were absolutely gorgeous because whenever it hit an enemy, it shattered into the glass. Now, I didn't see the glass doing extra damage. It looked like just a strictly visual effect, but it was beautiful. The interesting thing with this shotgun is the fact that it has a lot of stats that are very, very similar to a rifle, which is maybe gonna make it feel like it performs a little bit more like a rifle than a shotgun itself. The accuracy is 25, and that's like up to par with a lot of the more accurate rifles out there. The critical chance is 17. I know, it's a strange number. This one I was able to tell because it really looked like a 17. The critical multiplier is 1.7 times. Again, I was like, what is this number? But this was like a very, very apparently like a 1.7 times. I was like, there's no other number that looks like that. The status chance is 33%, and usually this is something that we would be jumping for joy at. However, we have to keep in mind that this is not a pellet-based rifle, but it looks like a slug-based rifle. And with pellet-based rifles, we love to go to the 100% mark, mainly because of the fact that, you know, you get all of the status procs and whatnot. But this one seems to only fire like a single big old bullet. Listen, I'm not a shotgun expert, okay? The magazine is 16. The reload is 4.33. Reload is 2. The trigger seemed to be a full auto. That's what they had listed there. I don't know if that's exactly what was going on the screen, if they were clicking or if they were holding, but it did seem to be listed as an auto. The IPS spread was 80 for impact, 40 for puncture, and 60 for slash. So it's primarily impact, slash comes next, then puncture follows that. The one thing that I did want to point out that I thought was very, very interesting is that its fall off range is really a lot longer than I thought it would be. The fall off starts at 40, so you have a full on 40 meters before the projectile starts to lose damage, and then as it goes up to 60 meters, that's when it starts losing more and more damage, and I believe usually fall off damage caps at 50%, so at 60 meters, you're gonna get 50% of the damage instead of the full on damage. And 40 meters is a good long range for shotguns. That's actually really, really interesting. The next one took me for a ride. This is the Fusilai, F-U-S-I-L-A-I, and those are the throwing knives. Now, this was the big red flag to me. I don't know if this is development build or this was gonna have some weird secondary effect, but it does have an auto and a semi-automatic mode, which I was like, what is going on? So the full auto mode has an accuracy of 100, the critical chance is 21%, the critical multiplier again is 1.7 times. Don't ask me, that's what they're putting. The fire rate is 2.83, the magazine is 6, the reload, this one was quite difficult to read, and I wasn't sure. I looked at it and it said 0.8. That's what I was seeing with my eyes. I could be wrong, but it looked to have a really, really fast reload speed. The status is 29%, which goes really, really well with its IPS spread that they have listed right now, which is puncture, which is 30.8, and its slash is 46.2. So it's leaning heavier into the slash side, which means that you can really push this towards being a status weapon. It's got a little bit of crit, it's got a little bit of status, so it's gonna be a nice balance. It'll be able to bypass armor. I think this is gonna be a really, really good one. But the weird thing is it has a semi-automatic listing. Now, from what I could see from the semi-auto, because the whole thing, you know, is a little bit longer, and you didn't get to see past a certain amount of the screen, but all of the stats seem to be the same, except its reload looks like it's gone up to 3 seconds, and the noise level, because normally throwing weapons are silent, went from silent to alarming. And I'm like, what do you mean? So this thing is probably going to have a very, very interesting secondary effect, or, you know, it's just in the dev build and that whole thing is just like a throwaway line that I don't know why it's showing up there. Don't ask me, but if it has a secondary ability, this is going to be really, really interesting to see exactly what it is. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to the Volnus, which is the Glass Hammer. This one I found to be very interesting because the attack speed, okay, I'm going to say it right now, because the status chance is really good and the attack speed is really fast, and its primary damage is slash. I'm like, we have a slashing hammer, like a legit slashing hammer. So the attack speed is 1.2, the channeling cost is 5, channeling damage is 1.5 times, the critical chance is 18%, the critical multiplier, this one, it looked strongly in my soul, I believed it to say 1.6 times. But who knows, it might be 1.8 times because the other ones had 1.7. Don't ask me, but that's what I read as the critical multiplier. There'll be images, you'll see it. The status chance is 30%, which goes perfectly with its IPS spread, which is impact 22, puncture 32, and slash is 46. So the reason why I'm really jazzed about this is because of the fact that the attack speed's fast, it's got slash at its base, and it's got a good amount of status to it. So this could be like a hammer that is bypassing armor with slash procs. I'm like, it's like an axe hammer. Let's be real. That's what this is. It's like an axe hammer, okay? Statistically wise, that's what it's out there. Now, these next ones are really, really interesting. We're going to go ahead and move on to the Grineer weapons. So we have the Argan Ak, which has 2 different fire modes, and we actually got to see both of them. The primary is a semi-auto that looks like it draws lines in on its target, so it's almost kind of like made to be sniperish, so it's like zoom is like a little bit more intense, but it doesn't seem to have like the full-on sniper scope. But its accuracy is 2.86, its critical chance is 27%, its critical multiplier is 1.5 times, its fire rate is 4.33. Magazine, and this one was weird. Okay, I read it and I looked at it in several different places, and the magazine looked like it said 43. I don't understand this. Magazine could have been 48. I don't know. That's a better magazine. It's an even number. I don't know, but it's a magazine of 43. That's what I read. Reload is 2.4. Status is 19%. Impact, and then the IPS for this is 24.5 on impact, puncture is 9.7, and slash is 22.8. As for its secondary, this one is, I believe, a full auto mode. So you'll just be able to kind of hold it down as a normal rifle. The accuracy is 11.1, the critical chance is 13.5, the critical multiplier is 1.5 times, and the fire rate is 5.0. Beyond that, I could not see if anything else changed. That's all that was basically available for me to see on the screen. However, if I get a better image, if I get an image for it that I do find as I'm scrubbing through the footage, I'll go ahead and post it up on the screen. Next thing that we have is the Dual Croaker. Now, there is a single version of this, too, that we did not get to see the stats on, but there is the dual version. This one's a little bit slow. It's got an attack speed at 0.917, channeling cost is 5, channeling damage is 1.5 times, critical chance is 13%, critical multiplier is 1.5 times, the status is 31%, and this one is also slash base. So it's got 8.4 for puncture, for impact, 12.6 for puncture, and slash is 49. So that one, I was like, this is really interesting. They're really pushing a lot of the slash damage out there, which I think goes well, and they've got a lot of status to go along with it. So they're like, we're gonna bypass some armor today. The model on this is actually really, really cool, but a part of me almost wants to see the single version, just because I feel like the single version is just gonna look cooler instead of having two. They looked a little bit unwieldy, but the model itself was really, really nice. So I'm like, okay, let's hold off. We'll see what happens. So let's go ahead and move into Gara. These are going to be her starting stats. We didn't get any kind of like ending stats because they hadn't leveled them up all the way when I went ahead and took this information. But at her base, armor is 125, energy is 150, health is 100, shields is 100, and the sprint speed is 1.15. The polarity she's coming with is 2 Vs, and the aura is going to be a D. I'm actually going to go ahead and post an image of the stat breakdown screen. I'm going to try to zoom in and make it look nice if at all possible. Really, the images are kind of going to be a little bit grainy because of the fact that I'm kind of zooming in on stuff, but we'll see what happens. So first things first, we've got Shattered Lash. And this one lashes out with a stream of shattered glass or hold for an arcing strike. Now this one had actually changed from the original video, which was basically instead of just a poke and hold, it's actually a poke, or if you hold it, she does a slash like that. You can count it mid-air, you can cast it mid-air, you can cast it on the move, so you've got some mobility with it, so you don't have to stay in one spot. And when they were modding it out, they seem to be able to get a whole lot of range for it, so that's really, really exciting. Her next ability is Splinter Storm. Gara's armor splinters into a maelstrom of shattered glass that slices enemies and impairs their weapons. Allies who contact the cloud are fortified against damage. This one is really, really interesting. Mainly because of the fact that, number one, this is an ability that you can cast on yourself or you can cast on enemies. So if you think about it this way, if you cast it on a group of enemies, right, that they're rushing you, it will impair their weapons. Now, I didn't really see this on the stream, so I'm almost kind of wondering if it's like a two-way street. Because it does have damage mitigation, so I'm thinking that if you cast it on yourself and your allies are kind of like in that glass cloud with you, they enjoy that mitigation as well. And I think that if you cast it on a group of enemies, you cast it on the enemies, it deals AoE damage to them, and it also impairs their weapon. I know that if enemies stand in the glass shattering thing, they'll take damage too. That's one thing that I did note on the stream, that enemies were taking damage if they were around you. But I think that the impairment, because I didn't see the impairment happen when enemies entered the glass field, at least, you know, from what I saw straight out of the game. This is just me observing what was on the screen, not necessarily being able to test it out hands-on. But it does have something that's gonna impair enemies' weapons, which is really, really interesting. This one provides damage redux and has a damage multiplier attached to it. So it's just a damage multiplier that's listed on the screen. I don't know what that damage multiplier is going to be attached to, whether it's going to be if you throw it on an enemy, or if it's going to be enemies that are within the cloud, or maybe it gives you a damage multiplier. It didn't say anything about granting you bonus damage in the actual description itself, so I think it might be something that they're going to use against the enemies. Next one up is Specterage. This one traps enemies in a carousel of mirrors. By the way, that's a fucking great way to, like, say this. And also, I'm going to put up the footage on the screen and you're going to see it. The carousel is actually beautiful. It's no longer the sad face of glass. It's like this really cool mirrored effect. But Specterage traps enemies in a carousel of mirrors, forcing them to attack visions of their true selves. Destroyed mirrors damage their attackers, as does the collapse of the carousel. So whenever these mirrors are destroyed, they're going to deal damage to the enemy destroying them, and then when the whole carousel collapses, it will do AoE damage. This one looked really, really cool on stream. I love the new effect for it. No more sad mirrors, which makes me happy. Moving on. Oh, and one thing that I did want to note about Specterage, they didn't even level it all the way up, and at the point that they had gotten to, they were able to get 14 mirrors. So that's a lot of, like, decoys for enemies to kind of, like, go up against. So that's really, really cool. Next one, and the final ability is Mass Vitrify. I feel like she's got really fancy named abilities, right? I don't know about you guys. But she creates an expanding ring of molten glass that slowly crystallizes enemies who enter. When the expansion is complete, the ring hardens to block weapons fire. So that was one of the things that I was definitely wondering about, whether it would act just like Frost Snow Globe. Using Shattered Lash will smash the ring and send razor-sharp glass flying outwards. So that's one of the things that I think that maybe you guys have to kind of keep in mind, is the fact that you can control the expansion of the glass. So if you want to deal damage with this, you don't necessarily want to have a big glass ring, because enemies will still be able to walk through the glass ring, from what I've seen, after it's solidified. Now, before it's solidified, enemies will walk through it and they'll be crystallized. But anything after that, they'll be able to walk through kind of like similarly to Frost Snow Globe. So if enemies are like getting inside of the circle, it does not seem like the circle itself will be able to do damage to anything inside, but it will be able to do damage to everything outside. So that's one of the things that I found interesting. Another thing to note is the stats on this is it has a growth rate and a drain per second. So that might be something that you want to keep in mind just in case you're kind of pre-planning your builds for her. And lastly, of course, this does have a damage multiplier attached to it as well. And a part of me kind of feels like the damage multiplier to this is attached to the crystallize effect. Like when enemies come in and they become crystallized, then they get the damage multiplier. That's the part where that makes the most sense to me. Regardless, that was a whole bunch of information I just dropped on you guys. I will let you process. I hope you enjoyed that. And I will be tuning into the stream again tomorrow to see what other information I can procure from there. So leave me your feels about any of these weapons. Do any of these things sound really, really interesting to you? Are you excited about the Glass Frame's abilities? And I'm pretty sure I got it on screen, but do you like the non-sad faced carousel? Do you like the fact that it's being called Specterage and it's a carousel of mirrors? I don't know. Let me know your feelings in the comments below. Let me know if you think that there's going to be some really crazy, interesting effect off of that secondary fusilage. I don't even remember what it's called anymore. I wrote it down once. The fusilali, whatever. Toss that in the comments. And as always, love somebody, hurt nobody, and touch your body. I'll chat with you guys next time. Bye-bye.